All right then, let me tell you a story about blood that soured and time that betrayed, all wrapped up in the soft ticking of an old woman's clock. If this means something to you, if you've ever trusted someone and watched them smile while they took everything, maybe you'll want to hear the rest. Maybe you'll even share it. They called it Mabel's clock, but it was never really about the damn clock. It was a tall, oak-bodied thing, stood about 6 feet high, shaped like it had dignity, the kind of clock that ticked like a heartbeat, like it remembered every secret the house ever held. My Aunt Mabel used to say it was the only man she ever trusted, to keep time and never talk back. She left it to me, along with a few other things when she passed. But the clock, she made me promise. Not in writing, no. Mabel didn't trust lawyers, not after what happened to her brother. She told me with her own dry lips, right there on her deathbed, "You make sure that clock never leaves family hands, Eli. There's a truth inside it I never could trust paper with." I should have listened harder. You see, I didn't expect to be widowed at 65, and I sure as hell didn't expect that one day my name would be scratched off the deed to my own family home like a stain on their plans. Didn't expect my only son, Joseph, to marry someone like Natalie. Natalie had the kind of charm that made folks stupid. Big smiles, soft voice, cried on command. She worked her way into every corner of our lives, then into our finances, until one day she started suggesting that maybe I needed less stress in my old age, that maybe the house was too much for me, that maybe I ought to move in somewhere. Comfortable, my ass. Joseph went along with it, not because he's cruel, but because he's weak. He never could say no to Natalie, not when she pouted, not when she lied, not even when she told him that Mabel's clock belonged in her new reading room. They moved into the house after my wife passed. Said it made more sense for a young family to live there. I was too tired to fight it. Grief will do that. Makes you mistake betrayal for mercy. Then the estate lawyer called me 6 months later, right out of the blue. Said there was some sort of clerical hiccup in Mabel's final filings. Mentioned something odd, something about a restricted clause tied to a physical artifact. Just that it had something to do with my son's wife, and a name that didn't belong on the inheritance papers. He didn't know what it was. That's when I remembered what Mabel said, about the clock, about the truth. And that's when I realized Natalie had stolen more than just my home. She'd stolen the clock. Problem is, her and Joseph had locked down that house tighter than a bank vault. New security system, coded gates, cameras at every corner. So I did what any old man with nothing left would do. I started planning a theft. And not just any theft. I was going to steal back time itself. I didn't have much, but I had time. That's the only thing folks underestimate. Once you hit your 60s, they think the world's moved on without you, that you're too slow to catch up. But slow's not the same as stupid. Slow gives you space to think. I started by watching. Didn't want to get too close. Didn't want Natalie's security system sniffing me out. So I parked in the lot by the little nature preserve across from my old house. Brought a pair of binoculars and a flask. Played the part of a lonely old man feeding birds. Every day at 10 o'clock sharp, Natalie left in her silver Lexus, either yoga or her therapist, or some brunch with the other wives, of whatever wine club she'd wormed into. Joseph left even earlier, worked down in the city, wore a suit that didn't fit him right. Never looked back at the house when he left. I noticed that. 3 weeks I sat there, saw the mail come at 11:12 every day, saw the lawn crew on Thursdays, saw that little blind spot between the front porch camera and the garden fence where the hedge had grown too wide. Sloppy mistake, but they weren't expecting a break-in from a man with bad knees and a library card. The key was the clock. I didn't know where she'd moved it, but I knew she wouldn't have thrown it out. Too proud. Natalie loved antiques, especially ones she could show off. I figured she'd put it somewhere central, probably near her hosting room, whatever she called it. Now, I couldn't just waltz in. Their system was linked to an app, one of those new ones you can disarm with a thumbprint or phone. I needed help, so I called Marcy. Marcy was my niece on my wife's side. Mid-30s, smarter than all hell, and twice divorced, thanks to her taste in men. She ran a phone repair shop out in Hilliard, but she had a side hustle reprogramming smart home devices for clients who forgot their passwords or had exes they didn't trust. "Uncle Eli," she said when I told her, "you want me to hack into your own son's security system?" "No," I said. "I want you to help me take back what's mine and maybe ruin a liar in the process." She didn't hesitate. We drove by the house that night. Marcy had her laptop open, fingers flying over the keys, scanning for the wireless access point. We didn't go in, not yet. She just mapped the digital nerves of the place, how the cameras talked to the cloud, what ports the system used, which ones had default admin passwords. It was scary how easy it was. "Give me 4 days," she said. "And you better not get caught, 'cause I don't do courtrooms." 4 days, that's when I started dreaming about the clock again. I could hear it, tick-tock, tick-tock, just like when I was a boy in Mabel's parlor, listening to her stories about the war, and how truth always had a way of finding its own rhythm. That ticking was steady in my head, louder than my own heart. It felt like Mabel herself was walking beside me, daring me to finish what she started. And on the 4th day, Marcy handed me a little black device. "Plug this into their router when you get inside," she said. "Gives me full access. Then I'll kill the cameras. You'll have 20 minutes before the system resets." 20 minutes, I repeated, more to myself than to her. "I don't even know where the damn clock is." "Then I suggest you move fast, old man." She wasn't smiling when she said it. I waited until the next Thursday, lawn crew day. Natalie left at 10:03. Joseph had been gone for hours. The workers were distracted, same as always, with their leaf blowers and Spanish music blaring from the truck bed. I slipped through the hedge blind spot, pressed my hand flat to the cool metal of the side gate. It was locked, but not alarmed. Mabel always said it. Sometimes the front door ain't your door. I was inside my own house. But it didn't feel like mine anymore. Everything had been scrubbed of warmth. My wife's quilts were gone, the family portraits replaced by magazine art. Even the air smelled different, lavender and bleach. But I found the router, plugged in the device. The cameras blinked once, then nothing. I had 20 minutes. I started searching, and right there, in what used to be the dining room, where Mabel's piano once stood, was the clock. They'd shoved it in a corner, next to some fake bonsai tree. It looked like it had been crying dust, but it was intact, still ticking. I stepped close, ran my hand down the frame, just like I used to. Then I opened the panel behind the pendulum, and I saw it. Tucked behind a wood panel with a false latch, aged yellow with time, was the document. I unfolded it, and there it was, a handwritten amendment, signed and dated, witnessed by Mabel's neighbor back in '93. It clearly stated that any transfer of the estate shall exclude beneficiaries who enter the family by marriage after the passing of the principal, Natalie. That smug little clause meant she wasn't entitled to a dime. Mabel never trusted her. Not even back then. I had it. But I didn't know Natalie was already on her way back. I was halfway back through the kitchen when I saw it. The glint of a silver Lexus easing up the driveway. Slow. Suspicious. Natalie never came home this early. My stomach tightened. I ducked behind the counter, heart thumping so loud I swore the clock could hear it. I peeked up just enough to see her silhouette in the driver's seat. She didn't get out right away. Sat there a minute. Maybe she'd forgotten something. Maybe she just had that sixth sense people like her always seem to have, like a rat sniffing out who's been near its food. Then the garage door opened. I had seconds. Marcy's device had bought me time, but not much. I stuffed the document into the inside of my jacket, wedged it behind my wallet so it wouldn't fall. I could have tried the back door, but that felt too obvious, and if Natalie saw me running, it was all over. So I went up the stairs. Old bones or not, I moved like a man who had something to lose. I knew the upstairs hallway, like the lines on my hand. Still remembered the creak on the 3rd step, so I skipped it, slid into the guest bedroom. Used to be my daughter's room, before cancer took her. Natalie turned it into a wellness space, whatever the hell that meant. It smelled like citrus and fake serenity. I cracked the window. 10 feet down to the backyard, a sloped roof underneath it. Over the sunroom. Manageable. She was inside now. I heard her heels clicking on the hardwood, calling for someone. "Joseph," she said, sweet at first, then sharper, like she already knew he wasn't there. I didn't wait. Swung one leg over the sill, then the other. Slid down onto the slanted roof, gripping the gutters like they owed me money. My knees screamed, but I didn't let go. Rolled down onto the grass like a sack of potatoes, landed in a bush, and bit my own tongue hard enough to taste copper. But I was out. The camera by the shed was still dead. Thank you, Marcy. I didn't stop moving until I hit the street. My old Buick was waiting behind a delivery truck. I climbed in, fingers trembling, throat dry as sand. I didn't look back at the house. Not until I was 3 blocks away, parked by the river. That's where I pulled the document out again. Smoothed it out on the dash. Read it twice. The ink was faded but legible. The clause was real. Legal. I ran the names through my head. Mabel, her witness, the date, the notarized stamp at the bottom. It was airtight. Natalie had no claim, no right to the estate, no right to the money, not even to the damn clock. I felt a laugh start in my chest. It bubbled up more relief than joy. But then it caught in my throat, turned bitter, because I realized something. This wasn't over. She wouldn't just hand over the house because I waved a dusty paper in her face. Natalie played for keeps. She'd lie, scream, threaten lawyers. And Joseph, he'd side with her again. Not because he didn't love me, but because he couldn't stand up to her. He never could. I'd need more than the truth. I'd need a plan. And just as I was about to drive off, my phone buzzed. A message from Marcy. It said, simply, she knows someone was in the house, wants to call the cops. You okay? I stared at the screen a long moment. Then I typed back. Let her. She's already lost. She just don't know it yet. It's a strange thing holding the truth in your hands. You think it'll feel like victory, but all it really gives you is work to do. I had the document, but I still had no power. Not yet. Natalie and Joseph had the estate, the accounts, the influence. I was just the old man with a wrinkled piece of paper and a bad back. No one was going to hand me anything. If I wanted my life back, I'd have to take it. And I had just the weapon to do it. See, Mabel's clause wasn't just a footnote. It was a legal landmine. The way it was worded, Natalie's name on any portion of the inheritance, automatically invalidated the entire probate transfer. That meant, if I dropped this into the right hands, the entire estate deal could be reversed, frozen, investigated. Natalie would lose everything. But here's the thing. I didn't want her to just lose. I wanted her to know she'd lost. I wanted her to sit in that big house she schemed her way into, watching it all slip through her fingers like sand. So I started small. First thing I did was copy the document. High-resolution scans, 5 of them. Mailed each one to different people. One went to a lawyer friend of mine in Cleveland, who owed me a favor from way back when. Another to Marcy, just in case. One to my old accountant, who Natalie never liked. One I kept in a safety deposit box. And the 5th? That one I sent directly to Natalie's father. Now, he and I never got along. Some retired dentist who thought the world owed his daughter everything. And I figured, if Natalie's inheritance was in jeopardy, maybe Daddy Dearest would start asking questions. But he was also the one who'd loaned her and Joseph the down payment for the renovations. 3 days later, the calls started. Joseph called first. I didn't answer. Then came the texts. Dozens. I read them all in silence, each one a different shade of panic. Dad, can we talk? Why are you doing this? Please don't ruin things. Not like this. Then finally, she's pregnant. Like that was supposed to fix something. I stared at the message a long time. I thought about the child, my grandchild, how they'd grow up in a house built on lies. If I didn't do something, how they'd be taught that betrayal was normal, so long as it paid well and wore a pretty smile. And I decided right then, no more guilt, no more backing down. Natalie had set this fire. I was just walking through it now. I called Marcy. I want you to make copies of the security footage, I said. She hesitated. There's no footage of you. I scrubbed it. I know, I said. I want the footage from before. The day they kicked me out. The way she spoke to me. The whole argument. Oh, she said, her voice cooling. Yeah, I remember that day. She was real proud of herself, wasn't she? Too proud, I said. I wanted to show the world who Natalie really was. So I compiled everything: audio, screenshots, the document, statements from neighbors who'd heard the fight. I turned it into a neat little file and emailed it, anonymously, to the local news tips desk. I didn't need them to run it. I just needed Natalie to think they might. And I'll tell you what, watching her unravel was like watching a snake writhe on a hot skillet. She showed up at my apartment 2 days later, knocked like she owned the place, wore sunglasses even though it was cloudy. When I opened the door, she didn't smile. "Not this time. You're making a mistake," she said. "No," I replied. "You did. I'm just finally correcting it." Her lips pressed tight. She stepped closer, eyes flashing. "You want to tear this family apart over some ancient scrap of paper? For what? Pride?" I stepped aside, letting her look into the quiet, cramped space I now called home. No fireplace, no antique clock, just silence and old dust. "For truth," I said, "something you wouldn't recognize if it bit you." She didn't flinch, but she didn't speak either, just stood there for a long moment. Then she turned and walked away. Didn't even close the door behind her. But I wasn't done. No, not yet. That was just the warning shot. Next came the part where I pretended to forgive her. Forgiveness is a curious weapon, soft in the hand, sharp in the heart. Natalie thought she knew how people like me worked, thought old men were predictable. We get angry, we shout, we threaten. And when that doesn't work, we get tired. We settle, we forgive. She'd seen it in Joseph, in her father, in anyone who ever tried to stand up to her. So when I called her the next day and said maybe we ought to talk, I could almost hear the smirk forming behind her silence. She didn't trust it, not right away. But she was greedy. Greedy people always think they're owed a second chance, if they can fake an apology long enough. We met at a diner on Route 48. Public place, neutral ground. I brought nothing but a manila folder, light in my hands, heavy with meaning. She showed up in pearls. I sat across from her, watched her order tea like she wasn't sweating. And when the waitress left, she leaned in and said, "So what do you want, Eli?" I didn't answer right away. I opened the folder, took out the document, not the original, just one of the copies. I laid it between us, like a holy book. "I want you to read that again," I said. She sighed like it was a chore, but her eyes flicked over the page quick, faster than someone reading, more like someone checking if a bomb was armed. When she looked up, the smirk was gone. "You have no proof this was filed legally," she said. "Don't need proof. I've got leverage," I said. Her jaw tightened. I leaned forward. "This can go two ways, Natalie. You can fight this in court, and I'll drag every rotten word you ever said to me into the light. I'll bring neighbors. I'll bring Marcy. I'll bring your own father if I have to." She tried to cut me off, but I raised my hand. "Or," I continued, "you and Joseph can sign over the house. Quietly. Let me move back in. You can take a generous portion of the estate, something fair, and start fresh somewhere else. Somewhere I never have to see your face again." Her eyes narrowed. "And you won't go public?" "I won't even breathe your name again," I said. "Not unless you give me a reason." She stared at me. Then she laughed. Short, bitter. "Joseph won't go for it." "He doesn't get to decide this time," I said. "You do. You wanted control. Now you've got it." She didn't touch her tea. She didn't say yes, but she didn't storm out either. That night, Joseph came by. He looked like he hadn't slept, sat on my front stoop like he was 8 years old again, knees pulled up, eyes red. "Dad," he said, "I didn't know about the clause, I swear." I believed him. That was the tragedy. "I know," I said. "But you knew what she was doing. You let her push me out." He nodded. No excuse, just that same wounded silence he always carried when he realized he'd failed someone. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I looked at him a long time. Saw the boy I'd taught to throw a baseball, the teenager who wrecked my Chevy trying to impress a girl, the man who'd let his wife treat me like old luggage. "Then fix it," I said. "Sign the papers. Walk away." He swallowed hard. And he did. 3 weeks later, the house was mine again. The judge didn't even blink. Said the clause was binding. Said Natalie's name had been improperly included on the transfer. No fight, no appeals. They just left. moved into some condo on the other side of town. She didn't wave goodbye. But here's the thing about revenge. It never quite fills the hole. Not all the way. That house didn't feel like home anymore. My wife wasn't in it. The laughter was gone. And Mabel's clock? I moved it back into the parlor, right where it used to be. It ticked and talked just the same, but the sound had changed. Quieter, like it knew something had ended. I stood there one night, hand on the pendulum, thinking about everything we lose when we let pride turn into poison. That's when Joseph knocked. He didn't come in, just stood there on the porch. "I'm not asking to stay," he said. "I just wanted to say I'm going to be a father soon." I looked at him, at the lines on his face, the regret in his posture. "You better raise that child better than you handled your wife," I said. He nodded, and before he turned to leave, I handed him something. A copy of the clause. Not out of spite, just a reminder. "Teach 'em truth," I said, "and maybe they won't need revenge when they're old." He took it, left. The house was quiet again. Only the clock spoke now. Tick, tock, time lost, time reclaimed, and maybe a little time left. Now, you'd think that's where it ends. Paper signed, house reclaimed, Natalie humiliated. But life's not a stage play. People like her don't exit quietly. 2 months passed. The clock was back in place. I'd repainted the living room, stitched new curtains, even put up that photo of my wife from our trip to Bar Harbor, the one where she's squinting into the sun, laughing like she knows a secret. I tried to breathe peace, tried to convince myself the war was over. Then came the letter. Not from Natalie, not even from Joseph. This came straight from a firm in Chicago, one of those boutique law outfits with gold foil on their envelopes. Inside was a short, cold message. Our client seeks a formal investigation into the validity of the handwritten clause, presented in the probate challenge. Natalie had found herself new lawyers, the kind that didn't like to lose. Now, I'm no fool. I'd expected backlash. But the way they worded it, the subtle accusation that the clause had been forged, that stung. Worse, it meant she wasn't done. She was planning to undo it all. Through courts this time, through doubt. And if you've never been falsely accused in your twilight years, let me tell you there's a special kind of anger that blooms when your integrity's questioned after a lifetime of trying to live right. So I called Marcy again. "I need the original," I told her. "You sure?" she said. "Once it's in play, it'll be examined under every microscope they've got." "That's fine," I said. "It's time they saw what truth looks like up close." But before I did that, I made one more stop. To the nursing home. See, Mabel's old neighbor, Margaret Brewer, was still alive. 92, mostly blind, but sharp as a tack, when she wanted to be. She was the witness on the clause. Her signature was the second half of the fuse. I brought flowers, sat with her for an hour, talked about the past, about Mabel, about the summers when we used to chase fireflies, down by the creek. Then I asked her if she remembered signing a document for Mabel sometime in '93. "Oh, that one," she said without hesitation. "The one about the marriage clause?" Lord, she went on about that for weeks. Said if that girl ever got her claws into Joseph, she'd make sure she couldn't touch a penny. I smiled. Margaret leaned forward, her hand shaking on mine. "You gonna fix what happened, Eli?" "I already started," I said. She nodded. "Good. Mabel didn't trust Easy, but she trusted you." And with that, the second match was lit. I sent a notarized affidavit from Margaret alongside the original document to the probate court. And then I waited. 2 weeks later, Natalie's lawyers dropped the challenge, just on Margaret's statement, and confirmed the notary still had a record in his old logbook. That was enough. The case was done. Irrevocable. But here's the part I didn't expect. Joseph came to the house one evening, not angry, not sheepish, just tired. He stood there a minute, hands in his pockets, then said, "I told her not to do it. She wouldn't listen, said I was too weak." I didn't answer, just looked at him. "She's gone," he said. "Left me, took the kid. Said she needed someone who'd fight for her future." He tried to laugh, but it broke halfway out of him. "I'm sorry, Dad," he said, "for all of it." I nodded. Then, slowly, I opened the door. Not wide, just enough. Funny how clocks measure more than time. They measure chances, too. the ones we take, the ones we waste, and the few we dare to offer back. "Come in," I said. "Let's talk. Might be time we start fixing things." And for the first time in a long while, the house didn't feel so empty. It felt like maybe, just maybe, truth had won, and that was enough. I guess there's one last thing I should tell you. 'Cause even after Natalie disappeared from our lives, and believe me, she vanished good, changed her number, took her maiden name back, like a clean slate. It wasn't peace I felt. Not entirely. You don't go through something like that without scars. Some mornings, I'd sit by the clock with my coffee, listening to its rhythm, thinking maybe Mabel wasn't just hiding legal tricks in that thing. Maybe she knew I'd need a way to keep myself steady when the dust settled, and all I had left were memories, and the bitter ache of having been right too late. Joseph started coming around more. Not often at first, just little drop-ins to fix a gutter, bring me groceries I didn't ask for. He was quieter, humbled, and something about that made it easier to forgive him. One night, about 6 months after the last court letter dried up, he brought the baby, little girl, hazel-eyed, quiet like her father, curious like her mother used to pretend to be. He held her like she was porcelain. You could tell he was scared he'd mess her up the same way he'd let Natalie mess everything else up. But I saw something different. I saw a man who'd finally understood consequence. "I named her Mabel," he said. I almost laughed. I almost cried. "Good," I told him. "She'll grow into it." And I meant it. You see, the real revenge? It wasn't the house. It wasn't the court. It wasn't even watching Natalie's world crack under the weight of her own ego. It was reclaiming what she tried to steal, the truth of who I was, the dignity, the voice, the legacy. That's what she never understood. That's what people like her never understand. You can take a man's house. You can stain his name for a season. But if you don't destroy his memory, if you don't erase the truth, then he can still come back from the ashes. And in the end, the people who bet on greed always lose to the ones who bet on time. So now I sit in this house, same as before, only now it breathes different. There's laughter again. There's warmth. And the clock still ticks. Not like a warning anymore, but like a promise. Thanks for sitting with me. If this story found a place in you, if it brought back a memory or quieted one, I'm grateful. Truth deserves to be heard. So if it meant something, pass it on. Well then, let me give you the final thread. It's a quiet one. Easy to miss if you're only listening for thunder. A few years passed. The house settled. Not just the wood or the paint, but the spirit of it. Places hold energy, you know. And for a long time this place was filled with silence that had teeth. Now, there's music sometimes. Marcy visits with her new girlfriend, and they fill the kitchen with laughter. I didn't realize I missed. Joseph comes over every Sunday like clockwork, and little Mabel, Lord, that girl, she's got fire in her already. "Why doesn't it chime, Grandpa?" she asked once, tapping the wood with her tiny hand. Always asking questions, always watching. Sometimes I catch her staring at the old clock. "Because it's done enough shouting," I said. She blinked at me, then smiled. Kids understand things in ways we forget. You see, revenge ain't the destination folks think it is. It's not justice wrapped in a bow, or some grand closing moment where the villain gets dragged off and the world claps. No, it's a crooked road. And at the end, if you're lucky, you don't find peace. You just find yourself again. Bruised, older, a little lonelier maybe, but whole. And if you're real lucky, you find someone still willing to sit across from you and call you Dad, or Grandpa, or just Eli. Sometimes I wonder if Mabel knew this would happen, that I'd fall, that I'd rise again, that her old clock would become something more than wood and gears. Maybe that's why she hid the truth in it. Not just about Natalie's inheritance, but about who we are when we're tested. And now, I wind the clock every Saturday morning. It ticks, it talks, and I smile. Because the house is warm again. Because the past is quiet now. Because in the end, I didn't just get revenge. I got my legacy back. And that's, until next time, take care. There's one last thing. Something small, almost invisible, but I can't leave it unsaid. After everything, after Natalie vanished and the courts closed, after Joseph and little Mabel filled the house with life again, I found myself wandering the attic one rainy afternoon. The place was dusty, the boards creaking under my weight. I hadn't been up there in years. That's when I found a box I hadn't remembered, tied with a faded ribbon, labeled in Mabel's shaky handwriting. For Eli, when the time feels right. Inside were letters. Hundreds of them, written over decades. Letters from people Mabel had helped, confided in, even scolded. Letters from my own mother before she died, from old friends who'd long since gone, and one, at the very bottom, addressed to me in particular. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about revenge. It was about resilience, about how life will bend you, betray you, even scar you. But if you hold on to truth, if you honor the past without letting it poison the present, you survive. You become something stronger than anyone who ever tried to take from you. I read it twice, then tucked it in my coat pocket. Mabel had left me not just the clock, not just a clause in an old will, but the knowledge that I could endure, that I could forgive without weakness, fight without hatred, and reclaim what was mine, without losing my soul. I went downstairs, sat by the ticking of the clock, and held little Mabel on my lap as she traced the pendulum, with tiny fingers. Time moves, people move, and the past, no matter how sharp its edges, can become something you carry, with care instead of resentment. I smiled, feeling the quiet weight of justice, truth, and family settle around me like a warm blanket. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. Every tick of the clock, every choice, every betrayal. Thank you for letting me share it. May it remind you that truth, patience, and courage endure far longer than spite.